This is Merps. We are recording this a little bit earlier than we typically do. So if you're listening in on Monday, this was recorded on Friday. So if crazy zombie apocalypse-esque things happen, then, I don't want you to assume that we're like glossing over the zombie apocalypse. Yes, you're muted. Well, the stream couldn't hear you, and I could not. Oh.
Well, thanks for letting me know. Is this working now? Yeah, okay, this is working now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Well then, let's start this over again.
Woohoo! Yeah.
ADWCTA has never sounded better.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Oh, guys.
We should have just stuck with that. That could have been the Lightforge. It's done. It's over.
Okay.
It's over.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and you're listening to the first take of this week's Lightforge. First take is best take.
And first take is early on Friday.
Early on Friday. So we're recording this on Friday. If crazy things happen during the weekend, rest assured, we're not just glossing over it. We're just not psychic.
Yep.
That's basically it. Or clairvoyant, sorry, not psychic.
So you'll get all that in the next Lightforge on Sunday, normally, the next week. There's no Lightforge this Sunday. We had to move it up because it's Memorial Day weekend. It's a holiday weekend here in the U.S., and that's why we also think Blizzard's not really going to do anything. They had a chance to do something in last week's patch. I think it was an outside shot. No one was really expecting them to do it, but the patch came out that changed the mana values of a couple cards, including when it comes to Arena, the one that matters is Call to Arms, so don't pick that. And then also, what was the other card? Like Summoner? Something Summoner?
Spiteful Summoner. Yep.
Spiteful Summoner, which, again, don't pick that either. They got their mana cost increased, and they did not get rebucketed, which is, I guess, what we expected. We said that on the last Lightforge, and that's what happened, so just never pick those cards right now. And no other cards have been rebucketed, even though there are still quite a number of misbucketings in the Arena. It's not, egregious enough to really ruin your drafting experience or your game experience or anything, but it affects a lot of things. Like if you know about it versus if you don't know about it, you'll be at a very significant disadvantage in drafting, in planning out your draft at least. But yeah, anyway, that's where we're at right now. We're not going to go over the patch that happened. We did that last week, so I want to jump right in with card good bad this week. We're going to talk about Mage and Warlock afterwards. We're going to hit up these classes. What do we have after this? Are we nearly done with going over all the classes?
I don't know about nearly done. So we did
Shaman Warrior. That's our next group, and then we'll be done.
Okay. Right. So for those of you who didn't listen to the last couple of episodes, we are going through the classes, class by class, and we do 2 per episode. Pretty much, and going through sort of how you should look at the draft and how you should evaluate the draft, because it's not just about whether a card is good or bad, it's about the bucket system and how often you can expect a card and how good it is relative to what it is being compared to, right, or to what it is up against. So, we've been going through those class by class and telling you this is how to win with this class. This is how to draft with this class. So if you haven't listened to those, 2 weeks ago we did Paladins and Rogues, and last week
3 weeks ago we did Paladins and Rogue. 2 weeks ago we did Hunter, and last week we did Priest and Druid.
Yes.
Druid was the big one because that's the one that's actually good. Obviously, Paladin and Rogue are still topping the meta, but Druid is, I think a number I think it's above Paladin right now in terms of just consistency in drafting as well as chance to go 12 wins. But Paladin's average win rate is higher because, as usual, Druid is a more difficult class to play than Paladins. And today we're going to talk about the other contenders in the kind of list of possible good classes, which is Mage and Warlock. Mage is hanging in at a 49.8% win rate on HS Replay, and Warlock has 49.5%. So that's all very much in there, like average player win rates. And these are not like easy classes to play. I know people shit on Mage a lot, but it's not an easy class to get the most out of. So that means that I think they're very much contenders for like top class or like second top class. I think Rogue right now as number one is pretty set. Like I had a Rogue draft the other day that just kind of went all sorts of wrong. Like I drafted it like in a way that I probably shouldn't have. We didn't get the cards we needed. The overall value was like mediocre. Nothing kind of made sense. And I didn't really struggle to get like, I think like 7 wins or something. Because that's where Rogue is right now. But after Rogue, I think it's kind of, you can make a good argument for like Paladin, Mage, Druid, Warlock, even Priest. So those are what we're covering today, and we'll deal with Shaman and Warrior later. They've kind of dropped back a little more. Warriors, of course, and Shamans can both be like insane, but it takes a draft to get there. Whereas a lot of these other classes, you can kind of just put stuff together and get there. Priest is the middle, I think. But anyway, yeah, actually Priest may be closer to Shaman and Warrior than Warlock, Druid, Mage. And Hunter, of course, is still dead last. So just a little spiel about the class rankings. What do you think? Do you think do you agree with me on Rogue being the definite number one? Let's start at the top.
I think Rogue is very high, and I think Druid is quite high as well. I would put those two at or near the top. And everything else, you know, I do feel as though it's very close right now, right? Like, whenever someone has a complaint about the meta, it's not about sort of the this, like, you know, huge chasm between the classes or a huge disparity, right? Yep. It's always about, you know, the stuff we're going to talk about, or the card that we're going to talk about, you know, something like that.
You mean whenever these days, like within this new meta, since the hotfix? Right. Because before, everyone was complaining very clearly about Paladin for a very long time.
Yeah. So I do think they're all pretty close. I will say I think Warrior has felt pretty good as well, mainly just because they seem to get offered like Bloodrazor a decent amount, and I think Bloodrazor is just so critical to winning.
Anything that deals 1 damage to everything is so insane in this meta, and I'm not sure like exactly why. It's not like there's that many token stuff around, but somehow the meta has shifted in a way where things that deal 1 damage to everything are just insane throughout. Like, we're talking everything from like even Whirlwind, right? Like Arcane Explosion. Those cards are better in this meta than in the vast majority of prior metas.
And I will say previously it was very obvious because it was good against Paladin, right? And Paladin dominated the meta. Now, you know, you still see Paladins out there, but it's not like the explanation isn't as simple now. But yes, I totally agree. 1 damage AoEs, you know, or that sort of thing, it has become extremely good. And I don't want to get too much into this because it's sort of
I think next week's thing?
Well, no, I'm going to hold myself back.
For Warrior talk.
For Warrior.
I'll give my pitch on why I think that's so, just to get people thinking. You have to think about the miss buckets whenever you think about these, especially in the neutral category. And one of the miss buckets, or that people think is a miss bucket, I'm actually getting like lower and lower on this card, but it's Lone Champ. And that's a very key thing that you want to be able to ping away. Then you add Cursed Disciple, then you add Worm. Worm's always been a little misbucketed. Cursed Disciple, I think, is regularly bucketed, but people still like it. So when you see these cards around a lot, they're like high impact cards, right? Like if you don't get rid of that 1 damage, you're suffering quite significantly. This is not a 2-1 on the board.
Yeah, I agree. Right, it's not just about the availability of pings or the probability of pings. It's about like how important that ping is,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, like Violet Worm, once you destroy that body, you need that, you need that, like, 1 damage AoE, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. It's so much of it is about the importance of it and about sort of your opponents setting it up and them taking a shot, right?
Mhm.
It's like them taking a shot and them putting themselves out there and saying like, well, I'm going to do this and
Yes.
hopefully they don't have it. And
And you have it whenever you have something that pings everything.
right, because we've all been in a situation, we've all been on that side as well, where we go out and we
Mhm.
play, and this is different, but like the classic example, playing into Flame Strike,
Yeah.
right? And then you say like, I gotta play into Flame Strike, and then if they have Flame Strike, like suddenly your chance of winning just drop dramatically.
Mhm.
So we have a kind of a similar situation.
Only
here,
now
and-
it's like single damage, like 1 damage to everything
Right.
will do it. Spirit
Yeah.
Lash is becoming a really great card. I keep talking about this giant tier list update that we're going to do, which has been delayed yet again. Sorry, guys, but it'll come next week. I would guarantee it will be out sometime next week. But in that update, like I think you're gonna see, like right now we already have Fan of Knives above like Eviscerate, like right under Sap. I think we still have Backstab a little higher. We still have Volspine higher, but in the new system, you're going to see like Fan of Knives being like right there at like the very top. I think it's gonna beat Sap.
wow.
Yeah, it's definitely going to beat like Backstab. It may even beat Vile Spine. I'm not 100% sure about that. But that's how important these full board the full ping on everything cards are. The Arcane Explosion is also going up a ton. Like same kind of deal. Like Spirit Lash, Whirlwind. We're just in that kind of meta. And again, this is the algorithm. I'm not doing anything like I'm not putting a thumb on the scale on the algorithm. Right, the algorithm is just figuring out what's getting played based on the availability of cards, and this one of the parts of this big update is we're getting more sophisticated in 10.4 and how to read how people are drafting in 10.4 and what cards you actually end up seeing in the meta. So once that update hit, it just drastically increased the value of board clears in general, but specifically the smaller board clears more so than the larger ones.
Gotcha. So anyways, that was a good conversation, good and lengthy conversation about something we did not plan to talk about.
No, but what we did plan to talk about, which is also kind of a board clear, is Mind Control Tech. That's our card, good, bad, and we're kicking it off with it. It's 113 points on the tier list. It is in bucket number 4, where Yeti is. I think that's
Right.
the... and if you're comparing it to 3 drops, that's where Scarlet Crusader, Death Speaker, Dragon Slayer, Eggnapper, Blackwalled Pixie, for some reason Pumpkin Peasant and Ravencaller. That's where those guys are. Also Lone Champ is there, Blood Knight. So you get some quality cards in this bucket, especially at the 3 drop in general. But Mind Control Tech is also in the mix there.
Yeah. So Mind Control Tech recently has been a big complaint among the community. Part of the reason is just a lot of the huge complaints Blizzard addressed. So we're left with good old MCT, right? And if you guys have played the arena for a while, you know that MCT is not a new issue. It's been an issue throughout all metas. Everyone has complained about MCT at a certain point. And I think for a pretty good reason, and we sort of know the arguments by now. Not only have we talked about it multiple times, I think we've talked about it with Shady. I think we talked about it with Hafu. I think we've talked about it with quite a few people.
It's one of our favorite topics.
Because it's one of those things that I think if you look at the underlying issues, it's so frustrating in such a fundamental way, right? But let's just look at why people dislike it and why I've argued many times that the design is bad, right?
Yeah,
Not
the
just,
design.
Right.
I'll put in my input after we hear from some. So if you guys don't know, we're putting all of our card good bads on Reddit now for discussion for a week. We won't jump into the discussion, but we'll read all the discussions that happen on there, whether it's between you guys or you just want to post your thoughts on the card, and then we'll address them in the next Lightforge.
Right. So funny enough, the top rated comment in the MCT thread was short and simple, which just says, "This card seems stupidly overpowered when played by your opponent." Now, if we break that down, I mean, I think, the comment doesn't say too much literally, but like it induces so much frustration, so much rage, right? And
I think it's
say,
just stating a fact that your opponents make better use of it than you, because your opponent, when it triggers, will always steal your largest minion, and when you use it, will always steal their smallest minion. That's how I lost a whole entire run the other time, if you guys were watching.
Me too.
Like, I started off with MCT in my deck, I went for it, I had other bad options where I needed a 3-drop or something, and the very first game, we MCT'd something. It was a 1-1, the only 1-1 my opponent had on the board. And the very next game, we got MCT'd, and it was the largest minion on our board by far, and we had 2 1-1s on our board.
Yep.
That's what happens. That's what always happens.
Right. And I will say, so here are 2 things that we can take away from the comment. So number 1, it feels really bad, right? It is a card that feels really bad. And we have seen Blizzard come out against cards like these that just don't feel good, right? And a lot of their nerfs from, for like Vicious Fledgling, I think that's a perfect example, right? Was it a powerful card? Yeah, it was a powerful card. But what really made it bad was how people felt about it, like sort of the frustration and, them seeing the fledgling hitting them in the face and them just like veins pop in their head, right? Yeah. So we've definitely seen Blizzard react to this, but also, like people joke about it's like, oh, it's only good when it's played by your opponents. But if you're a good player, what's the ratio of you playing MCT to opponents playing MCT against you? It's like
30 to 1.
1 to 10, 1
30
to
1.
Yeah, like something insane.
I think because you actually still kind of play around MCT now and then, I just generally don't. And so I do get MCT'd more often.
I think now you kind of have to.
Now I do a little bit. Now I do a little bit. And I'm sad whenever I do, because like my opponent has it like 10% of the time, like in their deck. And then I have to play around it.
You were so stubborn about it. You were super stubborn about it.
So one of the reasons why MCT is so bad right now is, and keep in mind, Blizzard has MCT being offered lower than it should be. Because it's a neutral minion from the classic set. And those have they're like Yetis, right? They have a depressed offering rate. So MCTs, by like normal logic, if they didn't have that, would actually be offered more often. Anyway. Where was I going with this? Okay, yeah. So the reason that MCT is around all the time is, one, not because it's improperly bucketed. It's actually bucketed like correctly. That's actually how powerful the card is. We have it in our tier list at a 113, which is a bit low. Like most of the cards on the 4th bucket where it's bucketed is actually going to be higher than 113, but MCT is correctly bucketed because we penalize RNG. And MCT, even when it triggers, does have a very significant RNG element. And so our tier list, our algorithm penalizes that. So it really should be like a 120 something or whatever, which is where all the rest of these cards that you're looking at are. So Blizzard has bucketed this correctly based on the odds of which all of it will trigger, based on the win rates. It's fine. There's no Blizzard error happening here. The issue is that there's no cards in the meta right now, because we're in the beginning of a new rotation, and there's no offering bonus to the current set. There's never been an offering bonus to Witchwood for whatever reason. Blizzard just decided to no longer give offering bonuses to the current set in the arena. And so you are seeing MCT literally more frequently than you have ever seen MCT before since, I want to say, the 3rd expansion. I think the 3rd expansion, definitely starting in TGT, you were already seeing MCT less than you do now. Because it was also a rare card, and rare cards used to be seen less. So
it used to be seen less. Yeah. And also, that was a totally different meta.
It was a totally different meta, yeah.
The board right now is so sticky and so messy, right?
Well, it was a pretty sticky board at that point, too. Remember that was the snowball meta, and GBG was still around with the piloted shredders?
Yeah, it was a snowball meta, definitely. But right now, you just have a lot of weird things going on, right? The
There's
game
definitely more tokens now than there used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think GBG was maybe the last time you saw MCT as frequently as you did now. And if someone wants to do the math, maybe I'm even wrong about that. Maybe Classic was literally the last time you saw MCT so often.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But right, so MCT, it's one of those things in which I'd like to point out something else. So, obviously, a lot of people sort of listed a lot of reasons, but Town L basically posted, a lot of reasons. I think these three reasons are kind of, the most convincing in terms of, how we should balance or how we should weigh MCT. It's that, so number one, it typically rewards poor play, and not so much it rewards poor play, but typically you're in a losing position when you play it.
Yep.
Or you're in an equal position at best, right? Probably. So it's one of those things in which there's no use when you are ahead. There's like very little use when you're like even, and then you're like, yes, let's roll the dice when you're like very behind. And then going past that, he basically just states that, okay, if you look at something with a lot of swing potential, typically if the ceiling is very high, then there should also be punishment when it doesn't hit, right? Mm-hmm. So something like, and he didn't use this as an example, but I think like Tinkmaster Overspark, right?
Yep.
Something like that. I think that is, a good example of a little more fair swing. But with MCT, we all know how much value it can create when it procs. It's essentially a 3-mana 3/3 mind control, right? Mm-hmm. But when you have something capable of that swing, you should have more of a punishment when it doesn't hit what it's supposed to hit. But even in the worst case, and obviously it's conditional, but even when you're able to have it hit something, there's no bad result. Even if it steals a 1/1, you're paying 3 mana for a combined 4/4 that deals 1 damage, which would be like the best card in the game in that situation. And sometimes it's not enough, right? I'm not saying,
So the balance is that this situation of which you can pull this off triggers so infrequently, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, but in reality, it's also it's not an unpreventable situation, but it's a situation in which the odds will just like if you're playing like, this game the way you do risk analysis, it's very rarely like meaningful for you to play around that. But then you run the risk of just losing the whole game. Like, it's kind of it's like the blue shell effect, right? Like you're just getting this, and it's even more ridiculous than Primordial Drake, which I always hate for the blue shell effect, because unlike Primordial Drake, this actually has an RNG element in it. It's not like, oh, I get the 4 minions to trigger, and then like I get a free 5/5, right? Or like something equally powerful as stealing an opponent's minion. Instead, it's you take something, could be a 1/1, which if your opponent has 4 or more things on the table, it probably has a 1/1 or something really tiny and insignificant. Or it could be that big minion they just played the turn before, right? And then you win the game. Like,
yeah,
that makes it even worse. Like, and that's the part about it I hate the most. Like, even more than the fact that it's one of these blue shell cards. Because there's actually plenty of blue shell cards in the game. It's just, it's part of the game. As people who are good, you don't like blue shell effects, obviously. But it's blue shell on top of RNG in it. Like, why? Why would you do this?
Right. It's as if, like, so if it wasn't bad enough as a blue shell, and for those of you who don't know, first of all, you're missing out on a fantastic game, Mario Kart. There's like 90 billion versions by now. You should play it.
One's on the Switch right now. It's really good.
It is really good. But it's not even like the blue shell in its current sort of form, in which the blue shell automatically targets the first player and it hits them, right?
Always, 100%. And it basically knocks them back to whatever place.
It knocks them back. But it's as if the blue shell has a 25% chance to knock you back 10 times the distance.
Right, yeah. Exactly, right? Yeah.
No,
and then also, to make up for it, 25% chance to have, like, basically no effect.
Right, yeah.
So now it's even with the normal blue shell. But it's not. It's so much worse than the normal blue shell.
Right, exactly. because the current blue shell is a little bit more like Primordial Drake.
Yeah.
The blue shell that we described is a little bit more like MCT. Right?
Terrible. Anyway, this has been in the game since the very beginning.
Right. So, look, we've talked about this, and a lot of people have identified the problem with it. And sort of, we've identified the problem in the design. We've identified the problem, or sort of what led to this card being picked a lot, right? There's issues with the current bucket system. What do you think?
No, I don't think there's issues with the current bucket system. I think it's just correctly bucketed. I don't think it's one of those things where, even if you're an average player, it's not an auto pick at all. I think you pick it a third of the time.
It's not one of those issues, in which it is not properly bucketed, so people pick it a lot, right? I think just because we don't have, for example, rare cards are no longer rare. You look at this.
Okay,
and,
you're saying at the offering odds, there's not enough. Like the system that's currently is just offering.
The system that's currently in place gives you a lot of opportunities. To pick it, and it's you see it often enough, and before when you saw it, a decent amount of time it'd be up against something good, right? But now it's it's one of the better cards in that bucket. So when you get that bucket and when you get MCT, I'm not saying it's an auto pick, but you're very rarely getting cards that are much better than it.
Yeah, it's always in the contention, right? You would have to get a bucket, a card that's been under bucketed to have to pick the other card over MCT. Otherwise, you're what do I need? A 3-drop, a 4-drop? Oh, I need a 3-drop. Well, MCT's fine. So MCT it's definitely a consideration in the arena. We all kind of play around it to different effects now, but it's definitely something to keep in mind.
But do you have a solution for it?
If I were Blizzard, or if I am a player in this current system?
No. If you were Blizzard.
If I were Blizzard, I would take it out of the game entirely. I don't think it adds anything to the game, no matter who you are. It's not noobs are oh, MCT, now arena is so much more fun. I have not heard someone say that ever. And Blizzard has shown the ability to, ban cards before, so why not? This is a card that's literally been a problem for more than 4 years. At some point, you just kind of have to say, well, this is crappy design, right? If we're not... by the way, has this card ever been used in Constructed? I don't even know.
It has.
At times? Okay, so assuming they want it as a way to control something in Constructed, and that this somehow has to be a 3-mana 3/3 instead of some card let's say, a 3-mana 3/2, which will make it much worse in the arena and probably not affect its usage in Constructed at all. If they're not going to do something like that to the card, then just take it out of the arena. It's not adding anything to the arena. It never has.
Yeah. So I agree. And I think, we're just at a point in which it's not a card in... Because some people are saying, well, look, why don't you just put it in the top bucket so it never gets picked?
Why? Right. You could, but it's...
Why dress it up? Why do that? I do agree. I think we should just take it out of the game. I think the amount that it adds to the game is so minimal, if any, and the amount that it takes away from the game is just so much. And look, we have board clears, but a lot of them are better designed and a lot more fair, right? Psychic Scream is incredibly powerful. I would say it's annoying too, but I think it's a lot more fair than MCT, right? Twisting Nether, Doom, those kind of cards.
The thing is, you see what we've done with, we have an algorithm that tells you how good a card is. MCT's not overpowered.
No, it's not.
We could not have the RNG penalties that we give because we assume that the people using it are good players, and it would still not be an overpowered card. It would be a totally normally powered card. It's just the swing and the way that it's used. It's just such bad design. It just comes down to that.
Also, you never want a card that predominantly punishes better players. Right.
I think Blizzard wants cards that predominantly punishes better players, but I think there should be a limit.
I don't think by this degree.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think there should be a limit on the degree to which the blue shell effect is allowed. I think Primordial Drake is too much. This is insane, right?
Right. This is a little bit way too much. I don't remember really the last time I was able to hit an MCT. And probably Twitch chat will remind me. It's like, wait, you just hit like the most amazing one last time, which just merps things. But yeah, I mean, we get MCT'd a lot, right? And I think that's something that is just like that's just poor design.
In Witchwood, I literally lose more than 10% of my games due to MCT. Now, it's not as bad as like Lich King when they first did Witchwood, and Lich King was literally everywhere, and everyone complained about it. It's not as bad as that, but if you like add it up, like 10% of your game should not be lost to one card. Where to play around it, you would have to change your entire strategy for like the majority of your decks, right? Like that's problematic design. Okay, anyway, that's MCT. Card good, bad. So is MCT good or bad? It's correctly bucketed. If you are playing in the game, use it, at your discretion. Definitely not a card to avoid or a card to auto-pick, but, we want to talk about some of the design considerations. Next week's card is going to be Worgen Abomination, also known as the neutral card that is not called Bone Mare Primordial Drake or Cobalt Scalebane. That is in the very top bucket. And we'll see. Like one thing I will say, our tier list currently rates it like a 117 or something. It's going up. It's going to be moved up significantly in the next tier list update, because we caught a bug of how we were doing that. Which happens. We'll see if it belongs in that bucket, and you guys can tell us your experiences with the card. It's an epic minion. There's no bonus to the current set, so I don't even know how many people have played with it or even seen it, right? Like, this is the famous card that Crip says, I've never seen this card in the arena. Well, I drafted it twice. I've seen it a few times. It's beaten me a few times, but it is very rare. So anyone's experiences with this card would also be appreciated. We want to hear some anecdotes. Go on our subreddit. The subreddit is called Grinning, and you'll see a post on there, and you guys can discuss away.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have a question from the goat for this week?
We do, and this is directed specifically at you.
Oh.
Question from the goat is basically, how's Evie doing?
The bunny? The bunny's right there. The bunny is...
Because you introduced the bunny, but I have not heard anything about the bunny.
Well, we definitely...
I think a lot of people will want to know how the bunny is doing.
We definitely loved the bunny more when we first got the bunny, and now we love it less.
Wow. Oh, jeez.
A couple of things have happened. One, it's no longer bright and shiny and new. I'm like staring at Evie in the eye as I'm saying this. I feel really horrible.
When was it ever shiny?
It was, you get a new bunny. It's very nice and excitable. And two, it peed on the bed twice, and in the corner in the bathroom it shouldn't have twice. So it's done bad things. That's kind of our fault. I'm not gonna lie. We take some responsibility for that. But you can't take all the blame away from the bunny. Like, the bunny had to way off the bed. We have a very low bed. So the bed is like it's not like the bunny's like, oh, I'm stuck on the bed, I guess I have to go. It's like, where the door is, you know how to get off the bed.
I don't think it's smart enough to know anyways.
It's not a smart bunny. She's doing fine though. We got a lot of good like carpeting and stuff for her floor. We got her like we have a whole setup going. Like, it's all going well. She's having a good time.
Okay, good. Hasn't been turned into dinner yet.
Has not been turned into dinner yet. I'll show photographic evidence now and then, or like video evidence is probably more convincing.
Have you eaten rabbit in front of her?
No, I haven't even eaten rabbit since I got her, even though I tried a couple times, but I kept getting stopped. And I don't mean like I get stopped by like, let's say like brand new, right? Who, co-owns the rabbit with me and obviously would probably not want me to eat rabbit. But like, we're talking about just random people I'm going out to dinner with just because they know I have a rabbit. Like, these are people that I've eaten rabbit with, like, in the past. And they know I like rabbit. And they like rabbit. And I'm like, hey, let's get the rabbit. I do like rabbit. Yeah. I eat the rabbit like a few times every year at least.
Okay.
And I'm trying to order a rabbit, and they're like, no, you can't do that. You have a rabbit now. I'm like, what? I don't know what one has to do with the other. But I've definitely been on 2 occasions prevented from eating rabbit since I've gotten Evie.
Sounds good. That was a question from the goat.
Question from the goat, brought to you by our patrons, patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for your support as always. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about Mage and Warlock now. We kind of flipped the script this week just to change things up. So now we're getting to the meat of like, I don't know how to play this game. Mage and Warlock. Let's start with Mage. What do you think about Mage right now? What do you see? What do you how do you draft it?
The thing that I see about Mage is, and one of the problems is this. I think too many of their most powerful cards are removals, whether AoE removals or single target removals. And while, look, this is where you might be confused. And you're like, wait, Merps, didn't you say like removals, especially premium removals, are like the best thing in Arena? It's like, yeah, they are. But if that's like sort of where you're putting all of your like chips into, right? You also kind of have this problem. And whenever I play Mage now, whenever I face Mage as well, Mages, you know, they really need to commit more than other classes in order to actually put on pressure.
Yeah.
Because their best cards, you know, Polymorph, Meteor, Blizzard, Flame Strike, Dragon's Fury, right? Dragon's Fury is a card in which a lot of people like, and it's only in the 4th bucket, you know. So you have all these like really good AoE and single target removals, but in terms of class minions, like powerful minions,
you know what they're really missing? This certain card that is a removal and put a lot of pressure on the board.
Oh, right. The card that we should not speak of.
I don't know what happened to it. No,
they super miss Fireline's Portal, because what they could do is they could sort of like, you know, just kind of like mess around, remove, and then starting from Fireline's Portal, suddenly they have this minion there as well, right? Yeah, I think they miss Fireline's Portal tremendously. So, you know, it's interesting because they have so many good, powerful removals, but like in terms of minions, you know, they do have to rely on those neutral minions, and in terms of minion quality, you know, understandably, because they have so many powerful removals, that like the class minions lack in damage, lack in stats, lack in a lot of things more than the other classes.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad. I'll go over the buckets with you guys right now so you can see what Merps means, but it's definitely like, this is exactly the problem with Mage. And I don't see it so much as a problem as like a necessary weakness. Because otherwise you get into the things in which, you know, we've seen Mage dominate the meta so often. Why? Because Firelands Sport, right? Because they could put the pressure on and they have all these removals. Now they still have their removals, which is what they were always known for, but they're ridiculously good minions in terms of like tempo stops at 4 with Water Elemental, and in terms of like just period stops at 5 with like Bonfire Elemental, right? And that's a big difference than a Firelands Portal or like the Summoner, Faceless Summoner back before that was banned. Okay, so and keep this in the back of your mind as I go through this, okay? As I go through these buckets, because you're going to want to know where you can get your minions as Mage, like, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to start with where you can't get your minions, which is the first 2 buckets. You can't, because the Mage cards here are too good. First bucket is Fireball, Polymorph, Flame Strike, Meteor. Those are all great cards. You're picking them. You're not picking the other minions. Like, it almost doesn't matter which one you're offered. You're picking that over the minion. Like, maybe Primordial Drake. Right? Yeah. And as Mage, I would argue Worgen Abomination, like, in certain cases, over a Fireball or Polymorph, or depending on what you're, like, how many of those you've already gotten. But you're not taking Bone Mirror, you're not taking Cobalt Scalebane.
Yeah, I think especially in like Cobalt Scalebane, that's a card in which like it's really hard to justify Scalebane over the Meteor, right?
I can never justify Scalebane over like almost anything. I think it's over bucketed.
Yeah, I know you haven't liked it, but anyways, yeah, that's the first bucket, and totally agree. Like, this is sort of the thing, right? Like, you will always have removals, and these removals are really good. But once again, if you get the top bucket, there's no choice here, right? And it's sort of the same quote problem. Similarly, that Druids had with UI, like it limits your choices. Now your choice is extremely good, right? When you're forced, quote unquote, to pick UI, or you're forced to pick like a medium.
But at least here, unlike UI, it's not just one card. Like,
Right,
if you
right.
pick a bunch of fireballs and polymorphs, that's not the same deck as if you pick a bunch of flame strikes. Like, you still have like options. And the
Yep.
options go even further. This is the great bucket. I love this bucket for the mage. It's the second bucket. And it is
It's
the
so
most,
interesting.
it's so
Yeah.
diverse. It's got everything. This is like how the bucket system should be done. It's got
I
Mana
love it.
Worm and Arcanologist for your like smaller drops. Kieran Tormage, that's a 3-drop. Water Elemental, that's a 4-drop. Also Leyline Manipulator for, you know, the potential synergies if you're going in that direction. That's so much like just curve, like good solid curve cards that also do something else with the type of synergy, right? Mana Worm synergizes with spells, Arcanologist synergizes with secrets, Water Elemental is both freeze and elemental, Leyline Manipulator is both an elemental and synergizes with adding like different cards into your deck. Kieran Tormage is synergizes with secrets. It's wonderful. And then you add your second tier removals, which are still really good. Your Frostbolt, your Blizzard, your Primordial Glyph, which is misbucketed. Primordial Glyph should be right up there with your Meteors and Flame Strikes and whatever. But still, right? Like, it's a good removal basically card. And then also here you have Pyroblast, the Reach King in the arena. Like, this is a great bucket. They're all kind of correctly bucketed more or less, and you really get to pick how you build your mage based on what you do in this bucket.
I totally agree. I think, look, it's not realistic to have all buckets like this, but this is the perfect example of the choices that, you know, in an ideal world we should be making, right? Not only do you have good minions, so sort of across a decent range of mana, you have, you know, like spells that either do different things or do the same thing but very polar, right? You know, you have Frostbolt on one hand and Pyroblast on the other hand, right? Which I think is very interesting. And, you know, like, I faced that choice many times and I found myself picking, you know, just based on how my deck is doing, which is the way it should be, right? So yeah, I think this is really good, but I think you're going to get to this. You know, like, you definitely are paying for the minions, especially something like a Mana Worm, right? It's so when I say, for example, you know, they're like Mage's minions, you know, are a little bit lacking. It's not because they don't have strong minions at all. We know how powerful Mana Worm is. We know how powerful Water Elemental is. It's just these days, it's never about how good a card is. It's about how relatively good that card is compared to the other cards it's offered with. And, you know, like, when you're picking in this bucket, like, man, you got to make sure that you're getting enough use out of that Mana Worm to justify passing up that Blizzard or, you know, that Frostbolt, you know?
The one thing mages can do is they can actually do this because their top bucket has no minions. So you know what you're getting in the top buckets, which means in the second buckets, if you really wanted to, you know, you can pick these minions, and then you just have to know that you're going to pass up some of these minions for spells at some point, or you won't have enough spells, but you can do it. And that's because, especially if you get a good draft or something, you hit the top bucket a couple times, like, you'll still have those spells. You won't have to always be making this choice. Anyway, it's very flexible. The one more thing I want to point out in this bucket, and this is going to basically destroy an entire possible archetype of mage. Like, seriously, this is the bad part of bucketing, right? There is a archetype that was totally fine before this new bucketing system, not the new bucketing system, but this particular bucket formed. I think this is mostly in the hotfix or at the beginning of Witchwood, but it wasn't a problem before Witchwood, and that is the free synergy. You cannot build a mage deck around a free synergy now. Don't even try. Why? Because here in this bucket, you have Blizzard, you have Frostbolt, and you have Water Elemental. And that is like 3 of your 6 freezing cards, like, all in one place. Cold Wraith is in your next bucket, which is great that that's not in the same bucket as these guys, but you're not going to have much after that. You're going to have, like, Glacial Shard, which is a neutral card. You're not going to see it too often. You're going to have, like, Cone of Cold, which you don't really want to pick. It's not, like, a great card. You definitely don't want to pick Frost Nova unless you absolutely have to, right? Like, because they bucketed 3 of the freezing cards into this bucket, freeze is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not much to say about that. Oh yeah, Breath of Sindragosa also is correctly bucketed later on, so it's pretty dead. If you happen to get those other freeze cards in place first, then you can think about going down some free synergy picks. But generally, it's not something to do. And that also makes something like Cold Wraith like worth less than it would be worth otherwise. Because otherwise, like Cold Wraith in the third bucket's great. Right now, Cold Wraith in the third bucket is like it's good, right? Like it's correctly bucketed. But if you were to do this system in a pure like old school draft, Cold Wraith should be in the second bucket, maybe even the first bucket, no questions asked.
Right.
Anyway, for an example, on the other hand, of like a synergy that works and works really, really well, and this is why you see it a lot, is the reach strategy, right? Of just like piling on a ton of damage to your opponent's face. And that's because Fireball is in the first bucket, Pyroblast and Frostbolt are in the second bucket, Flame Geyser's in the third bucket, Explosive Runes is in the fourth bucket. Like all of your top buckets, meaning all of the cards that Blizzard has good win rates for, are spread out. And those are your key reach cards as Mage. So we'll get into this with the fourth bucket. There's nothing in the fourth bucket. So Explosive Runes gets like an additional like push, as in you're picking neutral cards if you don't pick Explosive Runes. So the reach is a very well bucketed synergy. So it's something that you can really, well, I guess not a synergy, it's more of an archetype, but it's something you can really push for and get a good spread over it.
Yeah, it's one of those things in which, once again, just like how when you drafted Druid, you expect and you can plan towards the UI, right? Before you even click enter the arena, you know that if you play Druid, you can draft towards, the UI expecting it. And here, it's the same thing. And this is even safer, right? Because with UI, we're just talking about one card. This is just your game plan, and knowing that the odds favor you to play, for some face damage. And that's true. Like I do see a lot of mages use this strategy, right? Yeah. Where they just try to get the burn. Now, one of the problems with that is sometimes it just doesn't work, right? In terms, like maybe
you're always rolling the dice. It's a high risk strategy.
Yeah, like maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Not only because of the draft, but because, like I said before, it's not like their minions are that good, right? And thankfully, look, if they had really good minions and they had, Pyroblast plus like Frostbolt plus Blizzard, then I think this game would be just a little bit unfair. But right, so they go down this path, and then they do this strategy, and then there's a lot of sort of variance here, right? There's a lot of like, will it work or won't it work? But it's not as if like people have too much of a choice nowadays, because like you said, more often than not, you do have to take these risks or like make certain leaps at the very beginning of a draft and say, I'm going to get there, right? Just because of how this is. And if you're thinking of the long run, you can definitely just do this and, eat and accept those like 2-3 win runs. But man, a good number of your runs are going to go 10, go 11, go 12 when you do hit, like when everything lines up, right? You get the fireballs, you get the pyroblast, and then you also get the flame geysers. You also get like the the glyphs and everything. You get the runes, sometimes.
And you don't face warriors, and you don't face druids, and you don't face paladins with heal. Like,
yeah. So that is, I definitely see that as a legit strategy, and I would say that I see that as the predominant strategy.
That is the predominant strategy. And I'll tell you why that's the predominant strategy. It's because of this fourth bucket. We're going to skip over the third bucket for now and go directly to the fourth bucket. The fourth bucket has literally 2 cards in the Mage. This is one of the few, like, I don't know why they just didn't, like, throw a couple of the ones for the higher bucket down here, but the fifth bucket only has 3. So it's not like the fifth bucket has any to give to the fourth bucket. And the 2 cards are Explosive Runes and Dragon's Fury. Dragon's Fury decks are so hard to make now, I wouldn't even touch it. Like, once Firelands Portal went out the meta, you lost like such a good, like, high costing card. Like, it's not to say don't pick Dragon's Fury as a card, but it's a way worse card than it used to be. And Explosive Runes is one of those cards where it's okay, But if you have a risk strategy or a strategy that's very open to reach, then it's a really good card. So you're doing one of two things here, and this is very important. You're either taking all your explosive runes, or this is also the Chowan Yeti bucket, where we were talking about mind control tech. You remember that whole list of good, solid minions that we ran down? Or this is the bucket that you take your minions. Now, they're not the best minions, they're Yetis, but they're very solid. This is like, not necessarily value, but they will sustain you in a normal mid-range, like, mage kind of deal. And the other important thing here is that this particular bucket, like, the weak bucket for reach is the third bucket, because the only reach you have is Flame Geyser, which is not the best reach. But here's the deal with Flame Geyser. It's also an elemental. And here's the deal with the fourth bucket. It's like the only one with no elementals in it. And if you're wondering where the other elementals are, well, in the third bucket, which is where there's no reach, you have 3 elementals: Simmering Tempest, Flame Geyser, and Steam Surger, including one of your elemental triggers in Steam Surger. Then, in your fifth bucket, which is the bucket after Explosive Runes, you for some reason have Bonfire Elemental, which really should be in the third bucket. And so you get extreme value for picking Bonfire Elemental. So when you say like people use the reach strategy, they use the reach strategy because it's not mutually exclusive with the elemental strategy. In fact, they build upon each other. Like, if you have the reach strategy and you get to the fifth bucket, what are you taking? Are you really taking mirror entities? You're not. You have so many explosive runes. Why would you do that? Are you taking Curio Collector? You're not taking Curio Collector. It's a horribly misbucketed card. It's nowhere near that good. You're taking Bonfire Elementals anyway, because you'll have some miscellaneous elementals as mage. So why not? Especially when you have this third bucket that's kind of barren otherwise with what you really want to do. So what you're really picking between when you're picking a mage strategy is you can do elementals with a solid mid-range core. You can do reach with a solid mid-range core by avoiding the elemental synergies in the third bucket and instead taking like the good cards, right? Here's where you get your like Tar Creepers, your like Plated Beetles, your Dark Iron Dwarves, your Amani Berserkers, right? So you can do that, or you can take elemental synergies with reach, which is a little bit awkward, but you get a ton of value, and when it works out, it just dominates everything. Like, you don't even have a chance as the opponent, and you've all seen these kinds of decks. So those are really your options as mage that works really well. You're mixing and matching 3 separate strategies, and you can do 2 out of the 3. And that's because that's how the bucket system is set up.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's very true as well. I do see, I'll call them kind of, I'll call them sort of like aggressive-oriented mages, right? Mm-hmm. They definitely back up the aggression with elementals. And not only does it give them more power, right? It gives them sort of that, like, a small amount of out, right? Like, they can play a little bit more mid-range as well. Like, they don't have to go, like, super aggro, because if they have, let's say, the Pyroblast, they just play around, control the board, and then at some point, like, swing for a little bit of damage, and then they're right there, right? So I definitely do see this as well, like, in terms of the elementals and in terms of, mages just being a little bit more face focused than I'm used to.
Yeah. And one more point that I want to make about mages, and this is the point we've been making about every single class we've talked about, except maybe Paladin, which is that card draws are always under-bucketed. Like, they're criminally under-bucketed across the board in Blizzard's system. Why? Because card draw win rates are not as high as they should be. Why? Because average players don't do as well with card draws, because they draw cards instead of tempoing, and when they draw cards, you're extending the game, and they have more decisions to make, and that's not good for them.
Also, worse players are drawing worse cards, right? It's
right, like, yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, they're drawing like less synergized, less well-picked cards. So like, card draws are, every single card draw card is under-bucketed. So when you're talking about Arcane Intellect, like, look where Arcane Intellect, the most standard of card draw cards, is. It's in the same bucket 6, as Bloodfin Raptor. That's craziness. I hate Arcane Intellect. I've hated this card because people always overvalue the card on tier lists and like when they want to pick cards. Always. We've gone through like 3 years of metas in which people have always been like, pick the Arcane Intellect here. I'm like, no, you're valuing it way too high. Because everybody values an Arcane Intellect, for example, higher than a Yeti. That's just been a normal thing since the beginning of when this game was around all the way through, like, even today. And I'm not saying that's not true. I would say a Yeti and an Arcane Intellect have probably, like, fairly similar values. And when the game got slower at a certain point, then Arcane Intellect maybe had a little more value, maybe still around the same. But remember, Yeti's in the 4th bucket. Arcane Intellect is in the 6th bucket. That means Blizzard thinks Arcane Intellect is significantly worse than a Yeti. Like, this is the bucket of, I don't know, like your Vex Crow, your Arcane Artificer, your Shifting Scrolls, your Lesser Ruby Spellstones, which is another card draw card, but that one's a synergy one. Cinderstorm. Like, they're not terrible cards, but they're not in the same, like, realm as Arcane Intellect. And I'm using this as an example. I said the same thing about Nourish. I said the same thing about rogue card draw cards. They're just all underbucketed. And so, as the mage, you do have some of these cards, so take them. Arcane Intellect and Book of Scepters, they're your big ones. Yeah, don't pass them by.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. That's a good breakdown of Mage. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Identifies sort of how mages play, and also identifies, part of the reason why they're not at the very top, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to move to Warlock?
Yeah, let's move to Warlock. What do you think? You want to give an overview of Warlock? I'm going to talk about Warlock because Warlock is almost the opposite of Mage. And that Mage has some very well bucketed and well defined things. For Warlock, it's kind of like, they've always been a weird class when it comes to their class cards. Let's be honest. Well,
it seems like you Murray started, so
the bucketing system is not doing them any favors. Okay, well, I'll start with the first bucket, and then you can take it from there before I go deeper. First bucket. Remember, this is the neutral cards are Bone Mare, Cobalt Scalebane, Primordial Drake, Worgen Abomination. But usually class cards go better than that. Here it's Kobold Librarian, Despicable Dreadlord, Siphon Soul, Voidlord, and Bane of Doom. Never take Bane of Doom, first of all. Never, ever, ever take Bane of Doom. You will lose to Bane of Doom because it is heavy RNG, but never take it. It's not this good. Even with the RNG, even without an RNG penalty, it's not this good. Right? And you're better than the RNG. It's like, you win or lose the game when you play this card, or when someone else plays this card. Don't do that. Why is it so high? Because its win rate is probably justifying this. Why? Because there's a lot of bad players out there that Blizzard's getting the win rates for, and this is a very, very random card, so it's not for you. So you're left with 4 real cards, and they're good. They're all very, very good. They all deserve to be in the top bucket. And the one thing that I hate about this bucket, I think it may make a world of difference if this were not the case, is that Kobold Librarian is here. We rate Kobold Librarian as one of the best cards in Warlock. We've rated this guy that way from nearly the very beginning. I think after a week we updated it to be the one of the very top Warlock cards, and it stayed there. And so I don't have a problem with this bucketing. But I was really hoping, that Blizzard was not going to take this one drop and put it in the very top bucket. This is the meteor bucket, right? For Mage, Kobold Librarian, really? But they did. And so there's a price to pay for all these now, right? You're going to do one of these. And these 4 cards do 4 very different things. Despicable Dreadlord's a board clear. Siphon Soul's large removal. Voidlord is the best counter reach card in the entire game, and Kobold Librarian is a penalty less early game start while also synergizing with the Spellstone later on. So
I will say it is kind of disappointing when you have so many good cards here, but they do so many different things, right? And I will say that if there is any sort of redemption here, it is the fact that all right, let's see, what can you kind of get away with, right? I love Siphon Soul, but for me, and I've identified this, you can go for just the Spellstone synergy, right? And if you go for Spellstone synergy, it lessens your need for Siphon Soul. So
That's fair.
In terms of look, a lot of times you're still going to pick Siphon Soul. It's absolutely amazing, but if we're just looking at these cards, you know, Siphon Soul is one of those things in which you can say to yourself, like, look, if I just go all in on the Spellstone synergy, which is what I did for my 12-win Warlock, right? I had 4 Spellstones, I think, and I just went with all of the self-damage. I even took a Blood Witch, right? Like, at a certain point, you take all of that. And then, you know, I didn't have a Siphon Soul. I don't think I was offered it, but I didn't need it because of that, right? You know, like, and there were certain times, yeah, I faced like something with 10 or 12 HP.
Because Spellstones go what, 3, 5, 7 damage? Is that how it
7?
goes?
Yeah, 7 is the
3,
highest.
5, 7 damage.
3, 5,
and so
7.
at that point, you basically have a hard removal.
You basically do. So I would say at the very top, you know, if we're going to sort of dampen one, it would probably be Siphon Soul. Now, I think the game-winning card at the top bucket is just Despicable Dreadlord.
Yes.
That card is stupidly good. And it used to be stupidly good because you face a lot of paladins, right? And there is nothing more satisfying than facing paladin with Vine Cleaver and just dropping a Despicable Dreadlord and then clearing the board, and they're just like,
they need one more damage to kill it even.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible.
They can't kill it either. But I think Despicable Dreadlord is just the win card, you know? So general advice, it's always like, no matter what you're going for, just pick the Despicable Dreadlord. It is just that good. And then, you know, you actually do have choices between stuff like Siphon Soul, between Kobold Librarian, between Void Lord, and then all of the other stuff, right? Like, I don't know, like Scalebane in Warlock, not that bad. Maybe sometimes it's even like a Kobold Scalebane.
Like, the problem with Siphon Soul is not that it's a bad card, it's that, like, here, I'm gonna just... First of all, Siphon Soul is really just Assassinate with an appropriately additional heal, right? Like, the extra mana is worth that heal and nothing more. Assassinate's in the second bucket. That's all you really need to know about Siphon Soul. It's not misbucketed because there's nothing else in Warlock that's hard removing stuff, so you kind of need it. This is not like Rogue where you have saps and all that other stuff, but you're paying for it. So if there's a way you cannot pay for it, whether because of your archetype or you're just going to bite the bullet and say, I'm going to have so many things on the board that, like, you know, or like I can buff stuff, or I can like somehow not care if they just drop a huge giant minion, or I have enough card draw and tempo and things that I can, you know, just kind of take the hit and then keep going. It's hard to live without Siphon Souls, but you are paying the price. Whereas Despicable Dreadlord is something that Warlocks can generally do. You do have Defile, you do have like, I don't know, Dread Infernos, you have Hellfires, you have so many stuff that does very similar things, but it's a much better card than Siphon Soul. So if you're ever running low on, and we were talking earlier too about deal 1 damage to all things, right? Like, that's Despicable Dreadlord too. So if you're running low on those things at all, or you can substitute a Despicable Dreadlord in and then pick something else somewhere else, that's definitely a good thing to do. But just know that you're not actually getting your Siphon Soul like ability from anywhere else. I'm going to disagree heavily with what you were talking about Spellstones. I think you had a very, very lucky deck, and that very few times will people be able to replicate your deck.
I was going to say that because, like, yeah. So I was going to talk about the second bucket next and the unfortunateness.
Yeah, exactly. The second bucket is horrible because it has Spellstone in it. And again, I think Spellstone's a little over-bucketed just to start in the second bucket. Like, I don't think it's this is one of those things where I think they should just put Spellstone in the third bucket and that will solve everything. And that's because
might even make them too powerful.
Maybe
like, that one change might make Warlocks too powerful.
Maybe. That's how much it messes with things. Because what is in this bucket? Dread Inferno, Flame Imp, Vulgar Homunculus, Hellfire. That is 4 out of the 8 Warlock cards in this bucket. And all 4 of those cards hurt yourself. The only other cards that hurt yourself is the Kobold Librarian. Again, in the first bucket, you're really going to have to give up some stuff for the Kobold Librarian. And then you have nothing. I'm like trying to find something, and I'm like, you have nothing. Blood Witch, like you were talking about, fifth bucket. Yep. That's over bucketed for Blood Witch. You should not be taking a Blood Witch in the fifth bucket. Pit Lord in the sixth bucket. That's about right. Dark Possession in the fifth bucket, slightly over bucketed, but you may like, you know, if you have Spellstones, obviously then it becomes much more worth it. But that's it. You got nothing else to support your Spellstones, and your Spellstones needs you to damage yourself for them to do anything. So that's why I would actually really heavily advise against taking Spellstones unless you already have a bunch of like things that hurt themselves. So this is the real problem, right? You get your first, second bucket pick. You can't pick Spellstone. That's almost never worth it. So what do you pick? You have Mortal Coil, really good. Hook Reaver, really good. Defile, which is really the pick, right? Defile is the pick. But again, Defile does the same thing that Despicable Dreadlord does in many instances, and a bunch of your other board clears does. So you don't really need its function. And on the other hand, like Hellfire also does that, right? Whereas if you take Hellfire, Vulgar, Homunculus, Flame Imp, and Dread Inferno, and then you get it again and you take one of those again, and then you get it again and then you take a Spellstone, then boom, you have a much better deck than you did before. So you're unfortunately caught in this bucket 2, like Blizzard's just holding bucket 2 hostage when you're trying to build the Spellstone synergy. And I would never start with Spellstone first. I would always try to build the Spellstone synergies up and then pick the Spellstone and hope I get offered the Spellstone. Like, don't build a 4 Spellstone deck because you're going to end up with 4 Spellstones and nothing to trigger your Spellstones.
Yeah. So the second bucket is, once again, you know, we analyze it for the Mage. The second bucket is the reason that Warlocks are not more ahead, right? Like, if they tinkered with this somewhat and just made 1 or 2 moves here, right? Yep. Like, if they moved, let's say, Vulgar Homunculus to the third bucket, that would be really good. If they moved like just one of those more, I would call them problematic cards, right? Into another bucket, I think Warlocks would be a lot stronger. But yeah, as of right now, essentially, what can they do in terms of synergies, right? Because this Spellstone self-damage thing was something that they could do to make all of their cards, you know, to make the net effect of their deck very powerful, right? And we see a lot of classes doing that. You know, we just talked about with Mage, in which they go face damage, but they also supplement it with the elementals, and it's a very natural fit, right? Well, here, you know, for Warlocks, one of their most powerful synergies, self-damage to buff Spellstones, which, you know, like they self-damage and then they heal at the same time. They heal more, right? And typically self-damage, they pay for it by the card being very powerful, right? Hellfire is really powerful and very good tempo, but you take damage, your minions take damage. Vulgar Homunculus is ridiculous stats on turn 2, plus a taunt, but you take damage. Same thing with Flame Imp. Spellstone tempers that and eliminates that because you get all of that back. So one of your most powerful, if not your, like, you know, most powerful pathway or synergy, Blizzard kind of blocks it, right? Like, they make it really hard for you to do.
And so you look at the other thing you do is, what do you think of when you think of, you know, Warlocks, right? You think Zoo. Well, what do you do with Zoo? Kobold Librarian, top bucket. Flame Imp, Vulgar Homunculus, second bucket. Voidwalker, third bucket. Like, you're... Gnome Feratu is freaking third bucket.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's not weird because of one fact, is that that's where the win rates are, and that's where the win rates are because it's Warlock. They have no 2-drops anymore. So all 2-drops are actually third bucket. So what you do with Warlock is that every time you're below the third bucket and you see a 2-drop, take it. They're all under bucketed for you. It's like how, because Blizzard doesn't change the bucketing system by class for the neutral cards. So you'll see, like, for example, God, what's that 2/3 2/3 weapons guy? The guy that gets plus attack for weapons, for having weapons. 2/3 neutral card from Classic.
Oh, Bloodsail Raider.
Bloodsail Raider, yeah. So you'll see Bloodsail Raider as the same card for both, you know, let's say Warrior or Rogue versus like Mage. So you pick it a Warrior and Rogue, you get a benefit, right? It's not always that obvious. So for Warlock, What's not obvious is that every single 2-drop is very worth it. Every single 1-drop is very worth it for Warlock. So you take a lot of those. So here's what you do with Warlock. Warlock falls off a cliff after the 4th bucket. Your 5th bucket is Dustbath, Drain Soul, Blood Witch, Dark Possession. Your 6th bucket is Pterodax, which is probably the best card in here. Then Demon Fire, Possessed Lackey, Unwilling Sacrifice, Curse of Weakness, which is decent. Then Pit Lord, Ratcatcher. These are like decent cards. But these are the areas in which you can just take all your 2-drops. Like, every time you see a 2-drop in starting at the Ascetic Swamp Ooze, Bloodsail Raider like level, which is also where you get like Glacial Shard and whatever, going downwards, you take it. Because it's all good for you. The win rates back it up. You can make Zoo decks. So you're in this weird position now where if you want to make a Zoo deck, and well, what's Zoo weak to, for example? Well, Zoo's weak to 1 Giant Taunt, right? So you actually do need your Siphon Souls. And so you can't get your Kobold Librarians. And then maybe you want some Mortal Coils, or maybe you want a Dread Inferno, or maybe you could take a Blood Imp or a Vulgar Homunculus in the 2nd bucket, or maybe you could just take one of the neutral cards, which are generally all pretty good tempo cards as well. But if you're going for Zoo, you're not building your Zoo with Warlock cards. You're using the Warlock hero power to support your Zoo. You're building your Zoo with neutral cards that are under bucketed for you because they're normally bucketed for everyone else.
Right.
It doesn't work too well because, as we talked about before, 2-drops are generally over bucketed, period. So in Warlock, they're like only slightly under bucketed, even though it works so much better for Warlocks. And you just end up like extracting a little bit of value rather than like a lot of value because it started off in a bad position. So that's what you would do for Zoo, right? And that's how looking at the buckets will help with that. So again, like a lot of things are just, it doesn't work too well for the Warlock. And where the Warlock kind of comes out ahead in the end is that it just, you get a lot of value. You get plenty of picks as Warlock in this 2nd bucket especially. Like I think Blizzard kind of knows that the 2nd bucket is too much stuff. So as Warlock, you actually get a ton of picks in the 2nd bucket. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but every time I've drafted Warlock and every time I've seen a Warlock, they have a lot of these cards.
So many, yeah. You definitely get a lot of, attempts or dips into the 2nd bucket, but it's still not enough to, regularly be able to rely on Spellstone synergy. So yeah, like you're left with this very awkward situation with Warlocks,
Mm-hmm.
and right now it's kind of dangerous to not go into a draft without some sort of preset roadmap, right? Like mages have that. Druids absolutely have that because that's like the one way to play Druid, and it just so happens it's ridiculously powerful and backed up by the strongest card in the game, which will most definitely probably be offered to you, right?
Yep.
Like,
Paladins definitely have it. Rogues have 2 ways, like Mage. Like
they have 2 ways, and they can pick, and both of them are offered. Like they can rest assured that they'll get enough support for whichever one they choose, right?
Priest basically only has 1 way,
right? And unfortunately, Warlocks
have 0 ways.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, and if they just move Spellstone below 1, or they move Vulgar Homunculus down 1.
Here's what they need to do. They need to move Flame Imp down 1 and Vulgar Homunculus. No, okay, Vulgar Homunculus down 1 and Flame Imp down 2.
And suddenly Warlock would be back.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. They would be back. And they would be doing quite well, I would say.
They can move some of the cards in the lower buckets up too. Like Doomguard's in the 4th bucket. Yes, I am not kidding. Like Shadow Flame's in the 4th bucket, in the same bucket as Shadow Bolt. So the 4th buckets, you're like, I have removals now, kind of like bucket. And they're all cheap, and they're all under bucketed. So, look, what Warlocks have going for it really is the hero power and the fact that they extract a lot more value out of neutral minions, which has always been the case. If you remember in Classic, Warlocks have like very few cards better than neutral cards. And we're kind of like back there because they're going by win rates again. Whereas for neutral cards, they're going by win rates for all classes. So now all the neutral cards are ahead again. And Warlocks do have cheap removals, like in terms of bucketing, right? Shadow Bolt, Doomguard, Shadow Flame. these are under-bucketed removals. Soulfire at third bucket is arguably an under-bucketed removal. You rarely get under-bucketed removals because removals are easy to play, and so the win rates usually kind of match up to it. But for whatever reason, Warlocks have these under-bucketed removals because I think everyone's just messing up archetypes. It's really hard to draft a Warlock. Like, it's probably the hardest class to draft for right now.
Yeah, I would say that that's very true. It's very awkward, and the Warlock itself is a very fragile character, right? In which, you know, its power comes from its ability to not, like, by not getting hit in the face, it reaches its full potential. Yeah. But if the opponent is putting on pressure, look, it has ways to fight back. It has AoE, it has like all these tricks, but you have to draft them and you have to have them, right? So that's always awkward. Let me ask you this question though. So we've kind of established, like, look, the classes that have this map, you know, even before they draft, are the classes that have an inherent advantage and they do well, while classes, for example, like the Warlock, you know, they're a little bit unsure, and you don't have this sort of safety blanket where, you know, it's like, okay, I will have this path to go down. What do you see for the future of Arena? Because a lot of people complain about the staleness of it, right? They're just like, wait, I see the same thing over and over again. And they're not talking about like, I only see this class or I only see that class. They're saying like play style. Look, this class only plays a certain way. That class only plays a certain way. If I see, you know, a paladin and I know, like, basically if I wanted that monotony, I would just go into constructed. So I know that every paladin I face is like, you know, a Murloc paladin, right? Or like every shaman I face is an even shaman or something like that. But, you know, with this system, it is true in that if there is a class that has only one style, it means that everything has synergized together for you to pick that one style, and rest assured that everything funnels into this one style and it will just become really powerful. So where are we going here, right? Like, is that it? Is that just it? Like,
yeah, I think that's it. I think that's Arena. I don't know what can be done. So, okay, you can mitigate the problem in many ways, right? To make it like a little less impactful, but it'll always be a problem. The most easy way to mitigate it a little bit is to stop it with the buckets. Buckets are great. We can talk about buckets. It's very easy to understand, which is why when Blizzard had buckets, I was like, they're clearly going to tell us what the buckets are, right? It's like, the only benefit of buckets is that it's easily communicable. Yeah. And they're not communicating. But whatever. But the easiest way for them to do anything about it right now is to get rid of buckets and just go a certain, like, they have a tier list. They clearly have a tier list. And it's not just buckets. They're doing it based off win rate or something else with it. And then they can just, you know, allow cards to be put into the same drafting, like, 3 choices within a certain band of it. And if they think that's a little too random, you know, maybe, I don't know, they probably don't think that's a little too random. But that will make it so that buckets are not so much a thing, right? So if Lesser Amethyst Spellstone is at the top of the bucket and Flame Imp is at the bottom of the bucket, well, now Flame Imp will be offered a lot with like Soulfire and Voidwalker and Feeding Time or whatever, whereas Lesser Amethyst Spellstone will be offered with like Bane of Doom and Void Lord and Despicable Dreadlord, right? And then you all of a sudden open yourself up to a lot more variety. You will actually like square your variety. Yes, you will square your variety by doing that, like mathematically. If you have fairly even distributions within the buckets currently, which you don't, but assuming you do, right? It makes a big difference in terms of variety. And I think once that happens, it'll be as variety driven as the old Arena. It's not going to totally solve the problem, because in the old Arena, when you have a really powerful card or something, all the archetypes kind of converge anyway, right? Like we talk about it. We talk about like, oh, here, you only play Control Mage in this meta. Why? Because Aggro Mage doesn't work. And especially some of the worst classes, it's like, this is the one way you can play Shaman. Like, in less than half of the metas has Shaman had more than one archetype.
Yeah.
Shaman. That's Shaman. It's not a flexible class, right? Hunters have always had like exactly 2 archetypes. Always. And then depending on which meta, one worked a little better than the other. Like, that's not a ton of variety, but they've never had that variety. So I think people are remembering a time when there was more variety, and maybe that only happened in 1 or 2 metas before then, and whether there was 10.4 or not 10.4, I don't think this meta was ever going to provide a lot of variety, even under the old system. But yeah, but the simple way to mitigate it is to break the buckets. I don't know what else you would do.
I think that's all you can do, really. But yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. That's what I would go for as well. So,
all right. Well, any last words on Mage or Warlock or this Lightforge, or are we wrapping up until next week?
I think that's it. And I like this breakdown. You know, like every time we do this, we're hoping to sort of give you guys actual tips on how to draft and what to expect, right? The probabilities. But also, I like us going into a discussion of like, not only is this class good or bad, but like, let's identify why it is so.
Mm-hmm.
And because us identifying why it is so, and you know, hopefully you guys understand it, it helps you guys to see, okay, like this is how you establish why this is good or bad. Or you look at the win rate, and we don't want you to just take away, it's like, oh, this class is good / bad. We want you to be able to look at that, look at the bucket, and do what we do exactly. Be like, what's the cause of this, right? Like, Mage is good. Like, it has very good cards, but something with the bucketing has to be like, you know, holding it back, right? Or Warlock, you know, like we've seen it at the top of the meta. What's holding it back in this meta? And some of it has to do with just card quality, obviously. But because the bucketing system makes such a big impact, you have to look at the buckets, look at the probabilities, and ask yourself, like, okay, what's going on here, right? Are the buckets hurting or helping the class? And is it hurting or helping this type of this mage, this type of warlock? So every single time we do an analysis like this, don't just remember what we tell you. Remember sort of the analysis, like,
because they're going to change a lot. Like, these buckets are going to change at least once a month, probably more frequently than that. And we're not going to go back and like reanalyze every bucket all the time. We may do it for the top classes, but not always. So yeah, that's it for this week. This is Mage and Warlock. Next week we'll either talk about something totally different, or we'll talk about Shaman and Warrior. I say we may talk about something totally different because I don't really want to talk about Shaman and Warrior. But who knows, right? Like, it's a long way off. Again, we're recording this on a Friday, so if something happens between now and Sunday when we normally record this, we won't know about it, but we'll cover it on the next Lightforge. So until then, everybody, hope you have or have had a great Memorial Day break. Until next week, this is ADWCTA.
This is Murphs. Good luck in the arena.
All right.